Imagine being treated like an intruder in a place where you should feel welcome. That's exactly what happened to Morgan Freeman, one of the most respected faces in world cinema, when he tried to check into a luxury hotel. He was rejected, humiliated, and forced to leave under disdainful gazes. But what no one expected was what would happen the next day. Freeman not only returned but did something that left everyone speechless. Yes, this is the story of how one man turned indignation into an act of courage, purchasing the hotel that expelled him to completely transform it. It wasn't just an act of revenge but one of justice. And today it stands as an example of change for us all. What he accomplished within those walls is simply unbelievable. And the lessons from this story may change the way we see respect and inclusion. Get ready for an emotional journey that will surprise you at every turn, because this is not just a story about Morgan Freeman. It's about how small actions can become great milestones of transformation. Morgan Freeman, an icon of cinema, arrived at the luxury hotel with his usual calm demeanor. His figure, with a serene smile and eyes that seemed to understand the world, contrasted with the opulent glow of the hotel's reception area. He wasn't accompanied by cameras or bodyguards, just his simplicity and the desire for a peaceful stay. But as he crossed those doors, he encountered something that neither money nor fame could prevent, a silent yet cruel prejudice. At first, everything seemed routine. Freeman presented his documents, patiently waiting as the receptionist checked the reservation. But seconds turned into uncomfortable minutes, and the professional smile gave way to a cold, distant look. Then came the excuse. "Unfortunately, we're fully booked." Stunned, Freeman immediately knew something was wrong. He had confirmed his reservation just hours earlier and was willing to pay any necessary fees. The response hit him like an invisible punch. This wasn't a logistical issue, it was intolerance. As if the situation wasn't humiliating enough, the staff seemed determined to make the experience even more degrading. A security guard, perhaps assuming the role of enforcer, approached uninvited, rudely gesturing for Freeman to leave. Other guests, visibly uncomfortable, averted their eyes or whispered among themselves while he maintained his composure, despite feeling the sting of being treated as an unwelcome outsider. He knew this moment was more than an isolated incident. It was a reflection of something deeper and darker. But Freeman was not one to back down in the face of injustice. Instead of succumbing to anger or despair, he decided to observe and absorb every detail of what had happened. This treatment wasn't just an affront to his dignity. It was a symptom of a systemic problem. Something needed to be done, and he could already feel the spark of an idea igniting within him, a quiet flame beginning to burn. As he walked out the hotel's doors, feeling the contemptuous gazes on his back, Freeman didn't look back. He knew that what awaited him wasn't defeat but an opportunity to rewrite this story. Little did they know, the man they had rejected that night would return in a way no one could have imagined. The cold night wind seemed to mock the silence Morgan Freeman maintained as he slowly walked down the illuminated sidewalk. Though his posture remained upright, something inside him burned, not with anger, but with relentless determination. The memory of the staff's disdainful gestures lingered in his mind, especially the receptionist's calculated look of indifference, which seemed to silently say, "You don't belong here." But the episode went beyond the refusal to accommodate him. One of the security guards, perhaps believing it was his duty to reinforce the role of oppressor, followed Freeman to the door, as if he posed a threat. The gesture was unnecessary and deliberate, a clear message that his presence there was not just unwelcome but intolerable. Despite his legendary patience, Morgan felt the weight of every look and gesture, like splinters pricking at his dignity. Behind all this coldness, something even more disturbing was hidden. The hotel, known for attracting guests from various nationalities and cultures, harbored an administration rooted in exclusion. That luxurious facade was merely a mask for deeply ingrained prejudices, revealed only when someone like Morgan Freeman dared to cross its boundaries. It was intriguing how such a renowned establishment could, in the 21st century, cling to such archaic practices. As he pondered the events of that night, a mix of insult and fascination filled his mind. He couldn't ignore the fact that this incident was more than personal. It symbolized something larger. Morgan, with his knack for seeing beyond the obvious, began to piece together a puzzle exposing an unsettling truth. And at that moment he wasn't just indignant. He wiped. Curiosity, however, carried a dangerous nuance. Morgan knew he should move on, but something inside him insisted that this story was far from over. With the hotel's lights now distant, he promised himself that he would uncover how far this intrigue would take him. After all, every great transformation begins with a spark of indignation. Morgan Freeman was no stranger to challenges, but something shifted that night. The incident wasn't just an isolated case. It was a reminder of how the world still clung to outdated prejudices. He spent the night reflecting, and as the dawn broke, his decision was already made. He would not remain silent. He had the resources, the experience, and above all, the determination to turn this humiliation into something extraordinary. Determined to act, Freeman contacted his legal team, describing every detail of what had occurred. The lawyers, initially surprised by the idea, quickly understood that Morgan wasn't seeking mere personal justice. He wanted to expose and dismantle the system that allowed such behavior. A hotel bold enough to discriminate needed to be held accountable, not just with words but with concrete actions, and that's when the audacious idea emerged: to purchase the hotel. The proposal was as unexpected as it was powerful. Who could imagine that the man humiliated the night before would be willing to take control of the very establishment that had turned him away? At first, there was resistance from the owners, who had no idea who the interested party was. But Morgan knew how to play the game. He used intermediaries and offered a price no one could refuse. When the deal was finally signed, the former management felt a mix of surprise and relief. Little did they know that the man now holding the keys to the hotel was the very one they had rejected. For Morgan, this moment wasn't about revenge but about creating a better future, a place where no one would ever be treated as he had been that night. The hotel was officially his, but this was just the beginning. Freeman understood that owning the building wasn't enough. He needed to rewrite its story, rebuilding its foundations not just with bricks, but with values. With this in mind, he prepared for the most challenging and transformative stage of all, turning the page on a past marked by exclusion and crafting a new chapter of inclusion and respect. With the keys to the hotel in hand, Morgan Freeman embarked on one of the most ambitious projects of his life. The first step was to gather the entire staff in a room, a meeting many expected to be merely procedural. But Freeman had other plans. He wasn't there just to take charge. He wanted to change the very essence of the place. With firm words and a piercing gaze, he announced that under his leadership, no form of discrimination would be tolerated. The reform began from the inside out. Freeman hired diversity specialists to identify toxic behaviors and propose cultural shifts. Those who clung to exclusionary practices were dismissed without hesitation. It wasn't a witch hunt, but a conscious effort to transform the hotel into a space where everyone, regardless of their background or appearance, felt genuinely welcome. Every decision was a statement of principles. Simultaneously, the physical environment underwent a revolution. The cold and impersonal lobbies were replaced with warmer spaces adorned with artwork and decorative elements reflecting diverse cultures. The transformation went beyond aesthetics. The goal was to create an atmosphere that radiated respect and hospitality from the very first glance. Former guests, accustomed to the place's indifference, could hardly believe the change. The message was clear. This was no longer the hotel that judged people based on stereotypes. Freeman implemented regular training sessions for staff, promoting empathy and understanding. He knew true change wouldn't come just from new walls, but from new mindsets. Each team member was encouraged to share ideas, fostering an environment where respect was not just encouraged but celebrated. Challenges still lay ahead, but the transformation was already evident. The hotel, once burdened by exclusionary practices, was rising as a symbol of renewal. Morgan Freeman was determined to make this place not just a tourist destination, but a landmark of inclusion and respect. And with each passing day, he knew he was closer to fulfilling that mission. The grand reopening of the hotel was announced with palpable anticipation. People weren't just curious to see the structural changes. They wanted to understand the impact of Morgan Freeman's vision. The hotel, now renamed with a title symbolizing unity and equality, became more than just a place to stay. It was a manifesto against discrimination, a space where everyone was not only accepted but celebrated for their differences. During the inauguration ceremony, Freeman took the stage with his characteristic calm, but this time, there was a special glint in his eyes. He spoke about his experience, not hiding the wounds left by the initial rejection, but emphasizing the strength he found to turn that pain into something powerful. His words resonated not only with the guests present, but with the millions watching the live broadcast. The hotel became a national symbol, attracting visitors from all corners of the globe, not just for its exceptional services but for what it represented. Freeman implemented policies that went beyond the obvious. free lodging for refugees in emergencies, training programs for youth from marginalized communities, and events celebrating cultural diversity. Every detail of the hotel's daily operations carried the imprint of a greater purpose. Over time, the impact extended far beyond the hotel walls. Other businesses began reviewing their own practices, inspired by Freeman's courage and determination. He had transformed a symbol of exclusion into a beacon of hope, proving that structural change is possible with willpower and leadership. And the most remarkable part was that for him, this was not an ending but the beginning of something even greater. The legacy of equality Freeman established in that hotel couldn't be measured in numbers or profits. It represented a shift in mindset, a constant reminder that respect and inclusion aren't just abstract ideals but tangible practices that can be implemented anywhere. And as the hotel thrived, Morgan knew that the true reward lay in every life touched by this transformation. Morgan Freeman's story reminds us that even in the face of the greatest humiliations, there's always room to turn pain into something extraordinary. He could have walked away and let that moment fade into obscurity, but he chose to act. His decision to transform the hotel that rejected him into a symbol of inclusion shows us that each of us can make a difference, even when the challenge seems insurmountable. Now I ask you, how many times have you stayed silent in the face of injustice? What can we learn from Morgan Freeman's courage to confront the problems around us? Does this story inspire you to act in some way in your own life? If you enjoyed this story and want more inspiring content like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any updates. Share this with someone who needs to hear this message, and let's spread examples of courage and transformation together.